to talk about a feature known as administrative units. Now, if you've got some experience with Active Directory on-premise or ADDS, Active Directory Domain Services, you might be familiar with a feature called OUs, Organizational Units. And one of the great things we could do with our on-premise Active Directory OUs is we could put users inside of an OU, an organizational unit, and we could delegate control over the resources that was in that unit. Now, administrative units are similar to that concept, but there are some differences. Ultimately, though, the point of an administrative unit is it allows us to sort of categorize our objects together, and then we can delegate control over those objects to certain admins using roles. So, for example, if my organization was broken up into different offices, like maybe I've got New York City, and maybe I've got Atlanta, Georgia, and maybe I've got Los Angeles, or you start getting into like Europe, maybe you're talking about London and Paris, and all these different places. You might have certain administrators that are designated control over those areas and those resources, and maybe the users that utilize those resources. So this is what an administrative unit is all about. So the way I can do that, I can manage that, is I can go here to portal.azure.com, click the menu button, go to Azure Active Directory. All right. And then from there, I have a blade called Administrative Units. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. And one thing you can do, you can click Learn More, which is always helpful because you can kind of skim through some of the documentation. But a couple things here, they give some examples of doing this. In this case, you're looking at, they've broken their administrative units up into School of Business, School of Engineering, security teams, executive teams, talking about maybe some kind of university type scenario. And then you got admins that are designated control over that. Now, ultimately, though, one of the things to understand here is the licensing requirements. You must have at least Azure AD Premium 1 in order to do this. Now, in my environment, I have Premium 2, so I am perfectly fine to do this. If you don't have a Premium license, it will let you create an administrative unit. You just can't populate it with anything, so it's kind of pointless, really. You got to have at least that Premium 1 license, okay? But let's go ahead and let's take a look at doing that. So I'll just jump back over here. I'm going to click Add. I'm going to create a administrative unit called NYC, all right, for maybe New York City. All right, from there, I can click Next to assign a role. Okay, so maybe I'm going to allow somebody who is a user administrator. I want a user administrator to have the ability to manage any user that's associated with this role, right? Or with this administrative unit. So in other words, if I had, let's say I had 50 users that were part of New York City, okay? If I put 50 users inside that administrative unit, then I could delegate a certain user to have what's called user administrator authority over that administrative unit. And they would be able to create and manage users. And you have all these other roles. I'm not getting into what all these roles are right now. You can kind of see what the descriptions are of these, but basically what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to give admin rights over a certain user. Okay, so from there I could do that, but I'm going to go ahead and create the role first. The administrative unit first. Let's create the administrative unit. So we got one called NYC. Let's create another one called ATL, maybe for Atlanta. Okay, all right, so we'll click that, review and create, and we've created two. So from there I can go to NYC. All right, and I can click to see what users are part of NYC. So if I can click Add, and maybe we'll say that Bob Jones is part of NYC, okay? And then if I go over, let's go back over here to ATL, and we'll say add a member to users, and we're going to do, let's do Larry Thomas. Now, let's just pretend that I've got 50 users in Atlanta listed here, and I've got 50 users in New York listed here. So now what I can do is I can go to Roles Administrators, and I can assign, say, the user administrative role. I could give that role over to a certain individual, okay? So a certain person could be given that user administrative role if I wanted over that. Okay, so any of these users you could assign it, and that's really what you're getting out of this. Now, you might recall an on-premise Active Directory with OUs, organizational units. A user couldn't be part of multiple OUs. A user could only be in one OU at a time. If you don't believe me, try it. Okay, a user could only be part of one organizational unit in on-premise Active Directory. Now, that's one thing that's very different about administrative units. In an administrative unit, a user could technically be a member of both of these if we wanted them to be. Of course, if you're going to do that, you probably wouldn't have called it New York City or Atlanta. If you're talking about, you know, offices. Now, if you broke your administrative units up based on departments or something, and maybe you've got a sales administrative unit and then a marketing administrative unit, and you have a user who's a member of both departments, you might have them part of both administrative units. But ultimately, if you're doing it like this, where you're breaking it up into different locations, like I am here, maybe my resources are either tied to New York and my resources are tied to Atlanta, or my users are tied to New York, Atlanta, then I would have maybe an admin or a group of admins that would control either one of these. So that is the idea of an administrative unit. Hey, this is John Christopher. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I want you to know that I'm trying really hard to grow this channel, so I hope you'll give me a like and a subscribe. Also, if you'll check the description in this video, I've got a link for you that can show you how you can get access to all my different courses. I have lots of different Microsoft certification courses that'll help you pass your exam. All right, thanks a lot for watching the video, and I hope to see you again.